Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Back alongside Bo Parrish, I'm Dave Erickson, and I'm very excited because there's a lot of personal experience I can draw on today's talk about leadership. When we think of leaders, we might think of someone like the president, or we might think of someone in politics, possibly. There's the positives and negatives of that. But there's also teachers, and there's coaches, mentors, all play a leadership role in our life. But how would you define the word leadership, Bo?
Very simple, Dave. Humility plus will. That is the essence of a leader. And more specifically, taking a significant interest on those with whom you associate yourself. Without people, without subjects, a leader does not exist. Practicing influence through the demonstration of care and a genuine concern for those whom you are leading is what makes a leader most effective.
So a perfect example of that would be a team atmosphere where you have one leader, your general, who is taking their team into competition. And it can be, of course, all types of sports. But that's the first thing that comes to mind to me. What about the flip side of that? Is there something in the community or maybe in business, a role model of that type?
Absolutely. And Dave, society defines for us very obvious focal leaders, coaches, principals of high schools. You mentioned the president of the United States, CEOs of companies. These are obvious. They're plain to see for everyone, and they all carry a certain title that speaks to their position of leadership. But to your question, perhaps less obvious leaders who exist every day in the community that are just as effective, if not more so, as these officially appointed leaders could be simple mentors, leaders of local networking groups, perhaps the manager at your favorite Starbucks, a mentor in the sense of a one-on-one personal coach that you meet with on a regular basis, a personal trainer that helps you reach your fitness goals. Anyone that's in a position to hold you accountable could be easily defined as a leader.
Boy, that is a job that you can't take lightly, and it's not easy to do, at least to follow through with, because you're talking maybe like a personal trainer. That's a one-on-one. But if you're talking about a CEO of a company, now you're leading many people, and there's a very different set of qualities that person has to have.
No question about it. And if you think of it, just to simplify the matter, leadership is simply the ability to exercise influence. And the way in which you create your following, whether it be through public office or through a local community homeowners association, is that you strategically focus your thoughts on those with whom you surround yourself with. The more homework that you can do on what is most important to those that you surround yourself with, the easier it is that you will be able to familiarize yourself with what's top of mind with those with whom you associate. If you think of it in the way that I've best heard it put by one of my personal mentors, is that he told me, he said, Bo, leadership is nothing more than a stewardship. And it's temporary, meaning once you are appointed to the position of leader, you cannot simply take for granted that it will last for the rest of your life. Your ability to lead is only as good as the positive influence that you are affecting on those with whom call you or identify you as a leader. So leadership is a stewardship, which at the heart is service. It's temporary. It only lasts as long as your ability to affect positive change and influence in people's life. And the last part of that, so leadership is a stewardship, it's temporary, and you're accountable, which means those whom you're leading have expectations of you to help them move in the direction that they intend to move. So a personal trainer is absolutely accountable to the outcome of the plan that the two of you have developed, because that plan is absolutely essential if you're hiring a trainer to get where it is you want to be in terms of your fitness goals. So he or she is accountable to that end result, and along the way, he is leading you through a weekly plan that the two of you have developed. The same can apply in business, whether it's getting to a certain level of sales and a certain level of production in sales, or if it's launching a new company that has specific targets with defined timelines, is that ultimately in the form of a one-on-one type mentor in the form of leadership, is that the accountability factor is a huge part of it, because you know at the end of the day, you're going to have to answer to this leader whom you've appointed to exercise influence over your life. And you either did what you said you're going to do or you didn't. That is what makes a leader a gifted leader.
And before we get to that gifted element, and this is always excites me, even growing up, and we had these catchphrases in high school, and one that one of my high school coaches once said is that some people pave roads and some people drive on them. Which one are you? And that was, he was talking to the leaders of the football team who didn't quite know they were leaders or in that position, but wanted to put it in a different perspective. Like, what you do, your actions will set this road for others to follow on. And what kind of road are you paving for those to follow? And so leaders lead by action, by example, and others hopefully will follow.
I love that. I love that. And one of the catchphrases that I was akin to growing up is that if you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. So leaders are also called upon to exercise that sense of adventure, to venture into the unknown where things aren't as familiar. Because in your example of paving a path, every road that currently exists today was once not there. And before it became the way, it was uncharted territory. Someone had to pave that road. Someone had to take that first step. Well, leaders are called upon to take on the risk that ultimately will benefit those that come behind them, those that will benefit from that risk that they took venturing out into unfamiliar territory.
And these are great lessons to learn as young adults growing up, or young men and young women, is that practice by serving others, which is what you're kind of the underlying current of this. To be a leader, you have to practice serving others for them to follow you. And again, by example.
That's right. That's right. And so before you ever make an ask, you are giving of yourself. And the way that manifests in the beginning, and it doesn't even have to be blatant out on the surface, but it's taking a sincere interest in those with whom you would like to lead, whether it's becoming the captain of the football team or the president of the student body, is that do for one what you wish you could do for 1,000. In other words, don't just throw up your hands and say, well, I can't change the day-to-day routine for the entire student body of 2,000 in my high school, but I certainly can positively influence the outcome of one student. And so I'm going to do that for that one student and trust that it will create a domino effect. And ultimately I will get there. So it's a one-to-one, which ultimately allows you to leverage rather than just becoming overwhelmed with just the sheer volume of work that's going to be required in order to effectively communicate your desire to positively impact the lives of those with whom you're leading. Dave, So let me ask you a question, and we were kind of dialoguing back and forth before we officially jumped on the call. And I asked you, in your up to this point in your life, if I were to ask you who the most influential leader of your life has been, who would that person be? Could you kind of reiterate for our audience here what you and I were discussing? I believe you said it was your high school football coach.
That was one of them in the world of athletics at a pretty critical point in my life in high school, and I needed somebody like that. But to think more influential wise, there was a gentleman who taught me the value and the definition of the word integrity, and I'd never heard the word. Kind of never really understood what the word meant. And this was, I think I was late teens, maybe early 20s. And he was a health club president. He owned a health club and built it up to quite the place. And then he even expanded further. But he taught me the value of integrity. And I was on the housekeeping staff. This is kind of one of those college jobs. And
Got to start somewhere.
exactly. And so he gave me responsibilities. He encouraged me. He helped me see my potential. And there was at points where I was helping bring on other staff members who were my friends. But he looked at me as more than just a staff member. He saw me as a leader because I brought four of my friends from high school days as members of the staff.
Oh, okay, Dave. So let me interject here, because this is a very important point that you bring up. At some point along the way, he identified potential in you as a 19-year-old. Talk to me about when you picked up on the fact that he was interested in developing your talent, in developing your character, in helping you become more than what you were as a 19 or 20-year-old when you first went to work for him.
Very simply, we went for a walk. And this is a guy who's the CEO or whatever he was of his health club. I don't know how many hundreds of members he had, but he took time out of his day and went on a walk with me and asked me questions about what I wanted to do with my life. And he said something that I've loved this idea. As brutal as it sounded at the time, he says, if I know there's a better opportunity out there for you, I will fire you in a second. And that right there, it was hard to understand what he meant, but he's not going to keep me at a certain level when he sees that I have opportunities over there. So he says, I'm going to get rid of you. You don't belong here when you belong over there. So I'm going to fire you when I see that chance, happening. But he took time with me. He listened to me, he asked me questions. And to me, this guy was up here. He was a very important person to other people. I mean, he held meetings, he ran the business, but he took time for me, of all people. And there's other areas why that was important, but to a 19-year-old young man, that meant the world to me.
Absolutely. And Dave, isn't it amazing how our perception of those whom we most admire and whom we most love and closely identify as leaders is so vastly different from their perception of themselves? Whereas you just explained that this guy was number one in the entire organization, and that he stopped for an hour during his very busy day to take you, an entry-level housekeeping staff, for a walk. And along that walk, he explained to you that he was not going to prevent you from realizing your full potential, because as we've discussed in previous conversations, unlived potential is nothing more than wasted talent. So he knew there was something special about you, and he told you he was going to fire you. If, and matter of fact, he wanted to fire you because he believed in your ability to develop. And coming full circle back to integrity, as this gentleman first introduced into you as, again, at a very influential time in your life, as a late teenager, early 20-something, his integrity simply boils down into always doing what you say you are going to do. And you learn that valuable lesson at 19, 20 years old. And when I asked you the question, Dave, who is the most valuable leader that you've ever been exposed to in your entire life, 20 years later, you still remember this gentleman.
Oh, no question about it.
Any coincidence in that? Heck no.
Probably not. His name, just so if anyone were to look him up, is Nelson Mello. And after that, he got in. He kept doing things. The thing about him is that his business, he had to sell his business, or he sold his business for whatever reason, but he continued to try new things. He paved new roads. He came from a different background before the physical fitness industry, but it wasn't about physical fitness. It was about it was about a business and employing people and expanding. And one thing he told me, I overheard him say coming out of a meeting one time to some personal trainers, and it was a different way of thinking. He said, "Get educated on the topic," because it wasn't his job to necessarily, do the personal training. It was their job, and they needed to educate themselves to become better at it. So he was motivating, he was leading and directing them on what they needed to do. And he would always put the right people in place too. Again, you're delegating responsibilities, recognizing people's skill sets, but saying, hey, if you don't know it, get educated on it. So he was a motivator too.
And it sounds like, if I heard you right, Nelson was a master at working himself out of a job. Can you speak to the value of creating confidence in those around you as far as teaching and giving opportunities that on the front end may cause a bit of anxiety because it's not done exactly according to the way you would do it, but ultimately giving them an opportunity to develop? Can you talk a little bit about how Nelson empowered you in that sense through saying, okay, Dave, you're up. It's time to swing the bat?
It was a small example. It was probably the first small step of opportunities. It was me and my small, group of misfits, and he gave us the task of developing T-shirts for ourselves, for the housekeeping staff. And so one of my friends was a graphic designer. Even at that teenage years, he was very creative. And so his name is Todd, and we got together and what can we do? Nelson has given us the green light to design our own staff shirts just for us. And there's only, half a dozen of us or so, or more. And we put together this real simple T-shirt that had, I think it was either staff in the front or staff in the back, and then the letters, the initials of the health club. But that was one of those things like, you guys go ahead and do this, which means we had to design it. We had to find a place that would do the silk screen or the printing of it, the T-shirt quality, and the pricing. So he gave us a task that he knew was doable, but to us was like, wow, we've got something to do, and he trusted us to do it.
So there's another important talking point on the virtues of a fantastic leader is their ability to delegate and to empower. Whereas the tight-fisted, superficial leader is always going to have a micromanagement mentality, never trusting that things will get done if he or she is not directly involved. Those leaders never last because they never give that opportunity for those that they are leading to develop. We are all finite beings. Our lives all eventually come to an end. And in order for the essence of leadership to continue, there has to be that passing of the torch. And the better job a leader can do at exercising that delegation while he or she is still in a position of leadership and actually seeing the results of their understudies or of their subjects that they are leading attempt, which early is probably going to result in failure, but as we've also discussed in our previous conversations, failure is absolutely fine as long as it's not that final step. Every great leader is also at one point a tremendous failure, but they never stopped, and they never allow those that they're leading to stop. Just as Nelson told you, the sooner I get to fire you, the better I'm going to feel about your future. Because he saw that talent, he saw that potential, and he allowed you to develop it in making T-shirts for you and your fellow housekeeping staff. I'm sure that made you feel like the king of the world at that particular time. He trusted you to do a job and to do it well, and you did.
And there's ownership in that. We walked around in pride that this is something we created, and now we're a positive representation of him. So the empowerment was a really growing, maturing thing that he could have done to give us that opportunity. And I know he has to have pride if he were to drive by his old facility and say, I helped produce that outdoor pool, which is covered, or, I expanded to make a clothing shop on the other side of the building that was never there before. These are his ideas that came to fruition because he took the initiative to make it happen, and doesn't own it anymore. But if he drives by, it's like, yep, I did that. And those people have a job now.
And so a legacy has been born and is currently being lived out because of every great leader's ability to instill confidence in those with whom they are associated with and those whom they are currently leading. The opportunity has to come up. It has to be passed off, and it has to be picked up from those who are being led in order for it to develop and to get stronger and build momentum and continue momentum throughout the many years in the future to come. So really, I guess, wrapping things up, Dave, the best leaders are those that inspire us to become the very best versions of ourselves.
I feel like this could be a 2, 3, 4, 5-part series just on leadership alone, because there's so many great examples out there that have touched my life, that touched your life, and that it's a good one. So great topic today.
Fantastic. Dave, I hope you lead your lovely bride through a wonderful 4th of July holiday, and that you guys get back safe and sound so we can pick back up next week.
All right, Bo. Good talking to you. Thanks.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.